So I would like to introduce you our guests for today. Frédéric is a French Indologist, associate researcher at the Center for Himalayan Studies at CNRS, and he has published Langue et religion au Népal, les Néwars bouddhistes de la Vallée de Kathmandu, The Mission of the Néwars, Upholding Nepalbhasa and Buddhism and Buddhadharma, le bouddhisme tantrique, l'Uddiyana et l'Odisha, Tantric Buddhism, Uddiyana and Odisha. And today's talk will be on that very specific topic. Uddiyana is Odisha, locating the revelation of Buddhist Tantra. So please welcome our guests for today, both of you being online and those here.
Yes, so this talk today for me, it makes full sense because I'm just back from India. I was there last week and you heard about that event. Yes, they did for the second time and I had the good luck to be there, to participate. There were more than 1,000 Buddhist monks, mostly from Vajrayana, but some from Theravada also. And so it was, the conference was inserted into 5 days Monlam, centered of Guru Rinpoche. But from now on, I'm going to talk about Guru Padmasambhava, because we are in Indian context, and you will see how that it's quite important. So Odisha is the new name of Orissa, right? Or is the how to enlarge like this, right? No. Okay. It's good? Okay, perfect. Yes. This is the emblem of that state. I would say Orissa, it's easier for me to pronounce, and the birds and flowers and so on. And I added a new symbol, maybe, of the state of Orissa. Okay, so for those who are not familiar with the location of Orissa, it's in the east of India, south of West Bengal. And since some decades, but it takes time to come into the classes of the history of art and so on, archaeologists are discovering more and more Buddhist remains. You know, right, about it? Or not so much? Yeah. In the past, when we learned about the Vajrayana art in India, we always heard about the Palasena dynasty in Bihar, Bengal, right? Yes. But now we are going to have to add Orissa because they found many, and they continue to find every year Buddhist remains, remains of stupas, of monasteries, Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana also, and stone statues belonging to Vajrayana. So it's so interesting, and there are so many that we are going to we have to rewrite the history of Buddhism in India following these discoveries. And while there was that Monlam in Odisha for the second time with lamas from different countries, Nepal, India, Bhutan, also some lamas who live in Orissa. There are 5 Buddhist Tibetan settlements, refugee camps in Orissa since a long time. And so there are many purposes for that Monlam and conferences there. First, the fact that Monlam and conferences come together shows that both research, academic research, and the practice can feed each other, nourish each other. And among the purposes to start practice at least once a year in Orissa, one of the purposes is to start to make it a place of pilgrimage. So it's very meaningful to have places of pilgrimage in every religious traditions, because when we really follow a path, it can be compared to visiting the place like the house of our grandparents, or even our primary school if we have good memories of school. And when we visit this, we feel gratefulness for the grandparents, the parents, or some teacher that we liked. They gave us guidelines for our whole life. It's the same for people who follow a religion. I don't know if it's in the case of everybody. Everybody has his motivation to learn languages and history and arts, right? So for the different Buddhist traditions, there are some pilgrimage sites in common. In the first column on the left, you have the places related to the life of Sakyamuni Buddha. So for the followers of Theravada, these are almost the only places which are important for them to visit. Besides, of course, there are some footprints of the Buddha in Sri Lanka and so on, but mostly place of birth, childhood, and enlightenment, and so on until the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. So all the Buddhist traditions like to visit these places. Of course, it's very touching and inspiring. And for the followers of Mahayana philosophy, we have to add Gridakuta on the site of Rajgir in Bihar, right, where the Buddha taught the Prajna Paramita, which is the last peak on the summit of the Vulture's Peak. But then, and also as followers of Vajrayana, we go there. We go in all those places. But then, is there any specific place for us? This is a question which would be specific to followers of Vajrayana. So yes, there should be one, and I think we can pick up Uddiyana for the following reason. So, okay, you are all familiar with Vajrayana, okay? I'm not going to, but I would mention that the word Vajra is mentioned by the Buddha himself in a sutra. In the Vajra Chedika Sutra, the sutra of the cutting diamond, at the end of the sutra, his disciple, I think Subhuti, asked him how we should entitle that teaching that you just gave. And the Buddha said, call it the Diamond Cutting Sutra, because it will cut through the ignorance and make the reality, everlasting reality, shine. So from the mouth of the Buddha himself, we have the word Vajra. Then it became more and more important, as you know, in the first stage of Tantras, and then to the last stage, the Vajrayana, that you are very familiar to. And this is going to introduce the question of the location. Because yes, Uddiyana is mentioned in some tantras. It's mentioned also in the Sadhana Mala. Sadhana Mala, a collection of ritual practice, meditation. Like when we practice sadhana, it has been discovered in Nepal. It's among the Sanskrit text, very precious, kept by the Newars people. We can be very grateful to them. And in the Sadhana Mala, there are dozens and dozens of practice manuals of deities, visualization and mantra, and we find some deities specifically coming from Uddiyana, like Kurukula, in Tibetan we say Kurukule of Uddiyana, Marichi of Uddiyana, of course Padmasambhava of Uddiyana, Organ Lama. This is the Newars, beautiful Newars manuscript of the Prajna Paramita. We find again the Vajra here. Here, yes. Guru Padmasambhava is found on a lotus on Dhanakosha lake, right? So he is symbolized by a Vajra on a lotus flower. Tsoke Dorje, right? Tsoke Dorje when we practice Amitabha on the top. And so Padmasambhava of Uddiyana, many deities of Uddiyana. And also in some texts written in India, for example, by King Indrabhuti or Indrabodhi, Gyana Siddhi, his text Gyana Siddhi in Sanskrit, at the end of the text, it is written, that was written in Uddiyana. And in a text by his younger sister, Lakshminkara, Mahasiddha, female Mahasiddha Lakshminkara, Advaya Siddhi, text also mentioned at the end. This was written in Uddiyana Mahapita. Mahapita, like great tantric, powerful place. I say like that. So the name of Uddiyana is so redundant in Vajrayana Buddhism that it would be interesting to find the real geographic location of Uddiyana, beside other concepts, of course, throughout the history of Buddhism, especially including in Tibet, where some masters said they went to Uddiyana in a kind of vision, even retrieve some texts from there, some teachings. Yes, but all these people have walked on this earth, including Guru Rinpoche, so they have been born and practiced somewhere, transmitted the Tantras somewhere on this earth. So since Uddiyana is the most commonly mentioned place in Vajrayana Buddhism, let's try to find it. So there are two main, at least the first theory, even we just search on internet, on Wikipedia, and any talk, lecture will take for granted this valley of the Swat River in Pakistani Kashmir. And of course, it's comfortable to think that, yes, we know already, the experts have proved it, so we don't need to search anymore. But I'm going to show what are the main elements in favor of this thesis, and we'll see that there are not much. So the Buddhist activity in the Swat Valley, as shown by the remains that we still can find, these two peaks, left and right, down, low, belong to the area of Gandhara. As you know, it has been very much damaged and destroyed by the white Huns. You say this in English, Huns? Shvetahuna, sanskrit, les Huns en français, les Huns blancs. And after that, so this happened in the end of 5th century and beginning of 6th century. At that time, there were no king in Rabuti who received the Guya Samaja Tantra and others. So there was not yet the Vajrayana Tantra and founding masters who are at the origin of the Tibetan lineage that we know today. It was almost 2 centuries before. So, and until now, we have not found evidences of practice of Vajrayana there in the field of archaeology. Of course, this hypothesis started with the travelogue, we can say, no? Travelogue in modern vocabulary, of some Chinese pilgrims. To sum up, in the text of Xuanzang, we find in Chinese Wuchangna, and the French translator Stanislas Julien here, translated it as early as 1858 into French, and he used the transcription handbook used by the Chinese pilgrim. So from the Chinese text and that transcription book made by the pilgrim himself, Stanislas Julien could reconstruct the possible Indian word from Chinese. So Wuchangna might have translated a word Uddiyana, as written there, Uddiyana, so not Uddiyana, but of course pronunciation can change throughout the centuries. Uddiyana. So Uddiyana in Sanskrit, we can find in the dictionary, it means a garden. And when we consult even ancient geographical maps made by the Britishers in India in the 19th century, we still can find some places called Uddiyana, even more than one, because it means garden, and it might have been a common name to name a nice place or maybe a real park or something like that. So this is an indication. It's better than nothing, this Uddiyana. But in the 7th century, there was still not yet a Vajrayana text with the mention of Uddiyana. So, okay, why not? And another important word in that travelogue is translated in French, in English by magic formula. I don't know how to say formula, magic formula. So, of course, we can feel excited and think, okay, Uddiyana is Uddiyana, magic formula is the mantra. So it's done. This is the place of the Mantrayana, origin of Mantrayana. But first, it's quite early. And about that word of magic formula, 1 century more or less before that pilgrim, there has been another one, Song Yun, in the 6th century. He mentioned a place, Wuchang. Well, we cannot be sure it's the same location. And also, these Chinese pilgrims, they have Brahman. And then the B becomes P is very common when we translate in Chinese. Brahman, Poloman, it becomes Poloman. It's not my hypothesis, it's sure, okay. Poloman means Brahman, but in the mind of the Chinese of that time, it might have mean the Indians in general. So it's true that the Brahmin caste is famous and they are expert in mantra, in Vedic Brahmin mantra, not Buddhist at all. So it's not sure that this magic formula were Buddhist, and it's too early. He published that his translation and commentary on the Tibetan Travelogue in 1940. So it was really a groundbreaking, and so we are very much indebted in the work of Tucci, that's for sure, for northern Kashmir, because his master, Go Tsangpa Gonpo Dorje, also went there, but didn't write about it, as far as I know. So Orgenpa, his disciple, wanted to try to find that places, and he wrote about it. And also, 3 centuries later, Taksang Repa also tried to find this Uddiyana. So according to Tucci, of course, it's interesting, but these texts are not so clear. We cannot take the map and follow the text and know where they have been. And they don't say they saw a Buddhist practice, of course, but it was many centuries after the beginning of Vajrayana. So maybe the first one went there, or he had a vision, or both, and his followers or following people try to find it in reality. That are the elements to support the hypothesis of Uddiyana in Swat. So I think we also have to be transdisciplinary researchers. Yes. So the text, the archaeology, epigraphy, the stones, statues, everything has to be used to try to find elements. I will not say really evidence, but elements. And why not also, maybe naively, I also consider botany and geography, just to add some more elements to our reflection. If we take as good as an information the story of King Indrabhuti as written in the life of the 84 Mahasiddhas by Abhayadatta. So he took a boat to sail, so it can be on a sea, it can be on a large river, why not, to the Jewel Island, and he found Padmasambhava, as you know, on a lotus. So in that story, there should be a big piece of water, big enough to go by boat, lotus flowers, islands with jewels. And for the lotus to grow, I saw some information, I'm not specialist of botany, the water lotus, as we have in South Asia, to blossom every year, to blossom, means that the water is not colder than 18 degrees Celsius. Minimum, really, to be able to blossom and to reproduce every year. But in the Swat Valley, as we can see in the Manodan Lake, which is in the Swat Valley in Pakistan, altitude 2,900 meters, temperature goes as low as -14 in winter, and not more than +14 in summer. So I choose a peak taken in winter to show the contrast. Now, of course, in summer there are some small flowers and so on. But it's difficult to imagine someone going by boat and find an island and the lotus and the diamonds. There is nothing in reality in that place as far as we know. So maybe 13 centuries ago the climate was different. Then it would contradict the climate warming theory, no? It would mean that it was much warmer at that time and now it's frozen. Okay, joking. This is taken at Hirapur in Orissa. So we are going to talk about Orissa soon. Okay, this pond is just beside the 64 Yogini temple, which is an open air stone circular temple, very interesting, with 64 statues of yoginis, and it's full of big pink lotus like that, beautiful. These two persons are two lamas who, of course, of Tibetan origin, but they grew up in Orissa, in Tibetan settlements, in the Dujam Tersar lineage. And the left one is a monk and still living in India most of the time. And right side is Lama Tenzin Sampel, who is in Ngakpa and who lives in France. He's more than 20 years. He was disciple of Dujam Yeshe Dorje and also especially Ketsun Zangpo Rinpoche. Lama Tenzin. So they grew up in Orissa, they know the place, and they really encourage research about the past, the Vajrayana past of Orissa. So that second hypothesis, I will have much more things to tell. So we have associated the Vajrayana with Uddiyana, and then we try to associate Uddiyana with Orissa, but also Orissa with Vajrayana, the three elements, because we are going also to talk about the Mahasiddhas, who are the founders of Vajrayana lineages and their connection to Orissa. So the Vajrayana founders and text, the modern state of Orissa, and the concept or the place of Uddiyana. So Uddiyana is mentioned in both Buddhist and Tantric Hindu texts as a Pitta or Pit, tantric power place. We might know about in Assam what is Kamakya. You know, right? Kamakya, yes. So I have listed in Hevaja Tantra, we find the four major Pitta, Uddiyana, Kamarupa, a former kingdom. Now in Assam, it could correspond to present Kamakya specifically, Purnagiri, and a place called Jalandhara. In the Sadhanamala, that collection of sadhana, Uddiyana, Kamarupa, Purnagiri, the same. The fourth one is Sri Hatta. Some people consider it might be present Sylhet, so if, with some evolution of the pronunciation, in present-day Bangladesh. And Kalika Purana, so from the Hindu Shakta tradition, it's very interesting in that text, in the same text, talking about the same place, in the same manuscript. At some pages they call it Uddiyana, at some pages call it Odra. And Odra, this is attested as one of the former names of Orissa state of Orissa. And they mention it is the seat of Lord Jagannath. So as you know, there is very famous, now considered as Hindu, temple in the city of Puri. So Jagannath Puri temple is so famous, for the processions, as we do in the Kathmandu Valley, also with Avalokiteshvara. This is also an element of reflection, of comparison. And Jagannath is mentioned by King Indrabhuti in his texts written in Uddiyana. So the same text I mentioned, Jnana Siddhi, starts with invocation to Lord Jagannath. And King Indrabhuti mentioned Jagannath 3 times in the text. So Uddiyana and Jagannath are connected in that Hindu text too. Then Kamarupa, Purnashala, which is a synonym of Purnagiri, and again Jalandhara, and sometimes in some version Jarashala. They locate in the north, southwest. We are going to see if it means anything. Another Hindu text, Brihanila Tantra, mentioned the goddess Bhairavi, described as goddess of Uddiyana and as consort of Jagannath. So once again, Uddiyana and Jagannath are associated. So I tried, because we have to try anything we have. I tried with Google Map to locate north, south, and west. It's not so conclusive, but we have to try. Uddiyana in the west. Okay, Uddiyana in the west. Orissa is there with the city of Sambalpur. We are going to talk about it. Okay, if we consider this is the west, then Sylhet or Srihatta were mentioned in the not mentioned in the south, in the north. Yes, sorry, I'm confused. Anyway, I could not. Of course, it does not match. It doesn't match exactly. Specifically, especially, we don't know about this Purnagiri. There is a Purnashala in Andhra Pradesh. It's synonym to Purnagiri. It's in the south. Okay, it makes sense. But then Jalandhar today, the Jalandhar in India is a city in Punjab. So yes, it takes us close to Pakistan if you really like Pakistan. But okay, why not? Anyway, it doesn't match exactly. But just to show that we have to search, sometimes simple ideas can bring some indications. Another very important place is Sambalpur. So, okay, Orissa is there. Sambalpur in western Orissa. This is one more element, because in the life of King Nirhabhuti, in the 84 Mahasiddha life stories, is mentioned that there is Uddiyana. Within Uddiyana, there are two kingdoms: Shambhala with King Indrabhuti, and Langue with a non-Buddhist king. And you know the story. King Indrabhuti gives his younger sister Lakshminka as a bride to the prince of Lanka. Of course, nowadays, Lanka for us is Sri Lanka, and the Ramayana, the Hindu epic. But actually, when we check, there have been many places called Lanka in India throughout history. It's not at all limited to modern Sri Lanka. And actually, the present city of Sonepur, just east of Sambalpur, okay, just east of Sambalpur, Sonepur, which means the city of God, had in the 10th century another name, Lanka. So we don't know if at the time of King Indrabhuti it was already called Lanka. It's difficult to find, but at least in the 10th century there was a city called Lanka, just a few dozens of kilometers, or maybe 100 or 200 kilometers east of Sambalpur. Then, of course, we cannot help but try to associate Sambalpur and Shambhala for the Tibetans, right? Shambhala, Shambal, these are the same syllables, maybe. We are going to talk more about Shambhala later and Kalachakra. Okay, so there is one more concept, Shambhala, connected to King Indrabhuti connected to Uddiyana, and Uddiyana and Indrabhuti connected to Jagannath, and Jagannath today is worshipped only in Orissa and since more than 1,000 years. I mentioned already Indrabhuti composed Gyanasiddhi in Uddiyana and pay homage to Jagannath. Lakshminka also composed Advaya Siddhi in Uddiyana Mahayoga Pitta. So the Hindu and Buddhists have the same idea that Uddiyana is a sacred place of tantric practice. The Kalachakra Tantra was revealed to a king of Shambhala. We talked so much about this. Which king? I don't know. At Dhanya Kataka Stupa. So yes, in the Andhra Pradesh state south of Orissa, there is the famous base of Stupa Amaravati, right? At Amaravati. And in that same state, there has been just in the first and second century AD or CE, there has been a city called Danyakataka, which was the capital city of the Shatavahana dynasty. Now that was 5th-6th century before King Irabhuti, the Danyakataka in Andhra Pradesh. But one hypothesis I heard from an Indian researcher is that Danyakataka may have become Katak, like the Katak, the city of Katak on the seashore of Orissa, not far from the famous sun temple, Konarak, Konarak. So it's possible that the short form of Danyakataka would have become Katak, which means a fortress or a city. Danya is the riches, the wealth, and Katak is the fortress. Well, it's just an hypothesis. We cannot prove it. Just we can mention the similarity of the syllables. Then, if you continue to the direction of Kalachakra, depending if it's Taranatha or for the other Tibetan historian, sometimes for Taranatha is Pitopa, for the other historian is Chilupa. Anyway, some Indian adept who taught Kalachakra Tantra to Avadutipa, Naropa, and Bodhishri at Ratnagiri Vihara in the 10th century. Ratnagiri Vihara is in Orissa. It's one of the 3 main places which we call now the Diamond Triangle. Ratnagiri and Lalitgiri and Udayagiri. And Giri means the hill. So this is the Diamond Triangle in the northeast of Orissa. So Ratnagiri, that is for sure, Taranatha tells it's in Orissa, and there is really a wonderful archaeological site there with monasteries, and we can find as everywhere there, the Theravada and Mahayana and Vajrayana. And so Kalachakra was taught at Ratnagiri in Orissa, that's for sure. So, of course, we can consider, Kalachakra was revealed in Amaravati, and then why not then going to Orissa? But revealed to a king of Shambhala, there is the idea of Shambalpur, Indabhuti, king of Shambalpur, and all these elements really are redundant. And at each step, we add one more element, which can make us think that all this could have happened in the same area, smaller than going from Pakistan, then to the Gulf of Bengal, then to Amaravati, and then Sri Lanka. And of course, at that time, people could walk a lot, but when Indabhuti would send his sister to Sri Lanka, and then on the way, she sees that the future husband is killing animals, so she's disgusted. So she goes to practice crazy wisdom naked with the ashes on the body. And then she becomes a Vajrayana teacher, still exchanging with Indabhuti and Kukuripa and all other Mahasiddhas that we can locate in eastern India. It makes a lot of travels. What else? Ptolemy, we say in English, Ptolemy, difficult for me. Greek geographer of the 1st century CE. He mentioned, he confirmed, because it was already known, that the diamonds of what he called Sambalak on the Manada, as he said, river, are very much appreciated in the Roman Empire. And it's true, we have other sources. The diamonds from Sambalak on the river Manada. Sambalak, Sambalpur today, and Manada, actually the main river in Orissa, which goes through Sambalpur, is Mahanadi, or Mahanada, Nadi or Nada, is the river. Maha is big. So most probably he's talking about Sambalpur of today and the Mahanadi river. Because actually in Sambalpur, specifically on an island, a big island, on the large river called Mahanadi, in Orissa, just close to Sambalpur, there has been actually diamond mines since at least the time of the Roman Empire, until the British closed the mines in the first half of the 19th century because they were not producing enough anymore. And the French traveler Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who was there in the 17th century, also heard and saw still the extraction and business of the diamond in what he calls Sumelpur. But he was in Odisha, and Sumelpur, Sambalpur, Sambalak, it really sounds quite similar. But there is no doubt that what today Sambalpur has been a worldly famous place for diamond. And Sambalpur kingdom was also labeled as Hirakhand, which means the region of diamond. And the main mine was on that island I mentioned, called Hirakud Diamond Island. And Hirakud is the name of the water dam which has been built in the 1950s and 60s. I want to talk again about it. And so it is redundant with the Indrabhuti discovering Padmasambhava on the Jewel Island in Lake Dana. So okay, it's a lake, it's not a river. It's true. This is doesn't. It's a difference. Lake Dhanakosha, the treasure of riches. Then in biography of Padmasambhava, I found in the book by Philippe Cornu. I didn't mention here exactly the title. In Tibetan, they say Kanakosha, Dhanakosha, is to the southwest of Vajrasana, Bodh Gaya, the diamond throne, and to the northwest of Uddiyana, in that biography of Padmasambhava. So Sambalpur is not straight southwest of Bodh Gaya, but southwest, yes, more to the south and to the west. And Sambalpur is, yes, in the northwest of the present state of Odisha. So why not? It matches. Today's Hirakud Dam on the Mahanadi has created a very huge lake. It has submerged more than 300 villages, small or big, in the 1950s, 60s. As far as I know, no survey had been done by the Archaeological Survey of India before the construction of the dam. So some villagers, according to Indian researchers who live there, whom I met, some villagers saved some statues before being expelled from their home to build the dam. But of course, 99% of the statues are underwater now. There might be hundreds of Hindu and also Buddhist statues, especially from the village of which was called Padmapur. So Padma, I wouldn't say it's Padmasambhava, but it's one more indication. It's very much Buddhist actually. It exists also in Hinduism, but Padmapur. We hope one day the Archaeological Survey of India or some other teams could receive the permission to dive into the lake. Actually, the level of the water, so the lake is this lake, this wall. I saw the map of before and during construction and after. The wall is really cutting into the main island, the Diamond Island. Maybe it's when we walk on the top of the wall, we are just above the lotus flower where Padmasambhava was found. Maybe. It's exciting, huh? So some Indian researchers go there by walking or motorbike when in the dry season, before the rainy season, when the level of water is low, and try to they take pics. And one statue, a beautiful statue of Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, seated, not the four arms that we see in the Tanka, okay, but a more ancient one, has been recovered very recently. He showed us the pic in the conference last week. It's exciting and promising. Much more should be done. And there are other things. It makes already many interesting elements. Huh? but we can continue to search in other directions too. So I mentioned already the story of Princess Lakshminkara, who wrote the text in Uddiyana, who was promised to the king of Lanka, who is now Sonepur. And Kalachakra Tantra, Katak, Ganya Kataka, and I will add the Konarak temple. So this sun temple on the seashore of Orissa is considered as a temple to the god, to Surya, the sun god, which is very rare in India. There are just a few. But in one of the elements of this big stone structure, which is there is a char. How would you say in English? A char, a chariot, a car, a chariot in stone, very monumental like this, with wheels like that in stone, and there are the 12 zodiac signs. And according to one lama whom I talk with, this resembles the zodiac as described in the Kalachakra Tantra. And if you consider that Pitoba or Chilupa, there are two names, received the Kalachakra Tantra and taught it to Naropa and others in Ratnagiri, which is in Orissa, and this Tantra revealed to a king of Shambhala, this again goes in the same direction. So more inquiry should be done about that sun temple, Konarak, in Orissa. I mentioned the homage to Jagannath Puri by King Indrabhuti. There are some local stories, ancient local stories about the displacement of the deity Jagannath, which is made of wood. It's the tradition of the tribal people there. So in Orissa, it's like in Madhya Pradesh also, we are in the tribal area, and including the Shabara tribe and others, the Naga. And okay, for example, I don't think I mentioned in the PowerPoint, in Udayagiri, in the Diamond Triangle in Orissa, there is a staircase going to a well in the area of the monastery. Okay, and there is the inscribed in the stone of the staircase. There is the dedication. How to say there is the mention of the sponsor of the building of this staircase, and it's called Naga Vajra. And according to the Indian expert who showed me that inscription, it might mean that the sponsor of that construction was a chief of a tribe belonging to the Naga ethnic group, practicing Vajrayana, Naga Vajra. And actually, there have been local dynasties of kings who supported Buddhism. Before the migration of Brahmins invited by the next dynasty of kings, the Brahmins came to Orissa by thousands, and then the caste Hinduism came to be more favored and sponsored by the kings. But the ethnic groups like the Shabara, Nagas, and all this, and their chiefs came into conflict with these more powerful kings, because they wanted to stick to Vajrayana, and they were really reluctant to the caste system. And there are elements. There are pics of statues where the Hindu god is trampling on with someone who looks like a tribal chief, according to his dress, and even some statues where some Hindu god is trampling on someone with the curled hair and long ears like that, which could be like a Buddha. It looks like a Buddha. There are elements of Buddha. So it has not been always peaceful. There has been a transformation by political power, and the Brahmin councillors, a kind of competition to get for the Brahmins, I think, the donation of the people. Yeah. And it takes me to that pic. I showed you the two lamas with the lotus flower, right, on the pond. It was just beside the pond is that open air 64 yogini temples. temple. And in the central structure, which is empty now, there are sources telling that it was the tantric deity Mahamaya. So it's one of the Vajrayana Tantra, right? Mahamaya, I think, taught by Kukuripa. But today there is no statue in the center, but there are still all the yoginis are there. Many of them very damaged. So I don't know who took the pain to break the face and the arms. They have not fallen down. So it really, as we can find everywhere in South Asia, even Southeast Asia, destruction of Buddhist statues happened at some time. And when it's free, you can visit for free. There is opening time. It means we don't have to pay, and it's open to everyone. It's not inside. There are three, four local Brahmins who try to get some money. So they put. I didn't show the pig, but they put some red color on one of the statue. They make some basic puja, and they give you the tika, and they ask for that. So it's like that. When there is no more Buddhist practice, then someone else takes the place. It's like that. But anyway, this 64 Yogini temple and the lotus, the lotus pond. It reminds me of the 7-line prayer, no? Organ yuke no chansan pema kesa donc pola yan sancho kingonovni pema june shesuta. Kortu kondro mong poko keki jesuda ruke chinkilop shishisu guru pema sidihum, right? The first 2 lines they say in the southwest of Uddiyana on a lotus flower. And the first line of the second part is in the middle of a circle of dakinis. So just when I see this and the lotus pond, the circle of Dakini, it reminds me of this prayer. But that's all. It's not maybe just poetry. And yes, the fourth point there, idols and rituals at Jagannath Puri. There are 2 main Jagannath Puri temples in Orissa. The main one in the east and in the north. There is it's called Dvitiya Kshetra, it's the second land of Lord Jagannath, and there are mentions, for example, in a text by a British visitor. I don't know if he was a officer of the colonial time or architect. I have the information somewhere, and in the second Jagannath Puri also. They are mentioned that there have been or still are one or at least one statue of Avalokiteshvara in Baripada and one statue of Buddha in black stone in Bhumi Sparsha Mudra in the main Jagannath Puri temple. It has been seen by a British man in the 19th century, and according to later observations, it has been destroyed at the time of renovation of the Jagannath Puri temple, destroyed and thrown in any pond or river, or as they used to do when they were not in the statue anymore. And there is something to search in that direction. So in the iconography of some Hindu temples, it is well known that there are hundreds and thousands of former Buddhist statues converted into Hindu statues, even here in the Kathmandu Valley, as you might know about this. In India also there are so many. I have the pics of, for example, one example among many of the 2 statues of Avalokiteshvara, one seated, one standing, tall like that, in stone, which were at one point in a street in Cuttack, in the city of Cuttack, in Orissa. Few years later, a local Brahmin managed to take them, put in his Hindu temple, and they became, so with painting, it became Vishnu and Shiva. But the Brahmin, the one researcher, Indian researcher that I know, a good friend of mine, he said, I'm Brahmin, I can remove the flowers. So we entered the temple, removed the flowers, so that I could take the pic and compare with the pics of the same statues 20 years ago when they were without any painting. And yes, it's true. They became, Avalokiteshvara became Vishnu and Shiva. So this happened many times. The problem is in some temples, like Jagannath Puri, we cannot enter if we don't look like Indian. It's just on the face. This is an obstacle. So our friends, Indian researchers, can do the job, no problem. And then the last point, the village names. Even just on Google, I found so many names which still have a Buddhist meaning. There is one village called Kurukula, with a statue of Kurukula, but I have not been able to see any pic. It's in a private home. Tarapur, and Bodh. There is still a big Buddha statue there, actually, Bodh like Buddha. Marichipur. Marichi was very popular. This wrathful female deity. We find dozens of her statues in Odisha. And other names also. And yes, for the statues, there are hundreds and hundreds. There are like 117 Taras and so many Avalokiteshvara, and even on a stone votive stupa, there is can be Vajrayogini, it can be Krodikali, Tomanakmo, according to one Lama also, which is very rare, but is there. Many Vajrasattva in the posture that we know with the Vajra like this. There are many in stone votive stupa there. Lying on the ground in the archaeological site, there are so many, they find more and more, and they don't have the means to quickly maintain them and classify. So it will be done little by little. There is really an abundance of Buddhist statues of Vajrayana cult that we cannot find anywhere else in India. And then the last point after the geography, like toponymy, rivers, flowers, prayers, legends, biographies of, for example, Padmasambhava, I will enlarge to other Mahasiddhas. Okay, there is not only Padmasambhava. And these Mahasiddhas, as you know, like Tilopa, Naropa, Virupa, Kambala, Pada, Kukuripa, so many, Gantapa, they have written, or at least they have sung the realization in the Doha Giti, Charya Giti. There are different names, and you know that the Bengali researcher 100 years ago, Hari Prasad, I forgot his family name. He found this manuscript here in Kathmandu, in the Royal Library of Nepal, now National Archives. And all these songs of realization, Saraha also, the song of Sarapada, very famous. They have been translated in Tibetan, but they come from India. This is a Tibetan manuscript, and in the first line, it says, in Indian language, this is Doha Kosha Gita. Gita is the song, okay? And then after the photo, it says, in Tibetan language, it's called, and it translates in Tibetan. And these manuscripts, the original ones kept by the Néwars in Kathmandu, they are written in Eastern Indian languages, or an Eastern Indian language. So the Bengalis will say, this is Old Bengali, so it belongs to us. And people from Orissa will say, this is Old Oriya, they say Oriya for their language. Old Oriya, or some expert will say, no, this is Old Maithili, from Maithila, south of Nepal. But at that time, there were not any of these three modern languages. So let's say Old Eastern Indian language. Not in Kashmiri language. Yes, this is one more element. And botany, again, because in the biographies of these Mahasiddhas, there are some flowers. I think you are familiar with these biographies, right? The Mahasiddhas, so it's very pleasant to read, right? There is the Champaka, I think it is really his name, a prince who spent his days smelling the flower Champaka on the right side, right? I think his name is Champaka. So he could not do any meditation. His mind goes to Champaka. So his guru had to find a way skillful way, to make him merge everything into the smell of Champaka so that he can reach non-duality. This flower doesn't grow at 3,000 meters of altitude in northern Pakistan. The same for the Karavira, which is also mentioned in some other Vajrayana texts. I forgot to mention this. There is one village called it's called 84. I forgot the Indian number. 84. Chaurasati is 64, and what is 84? Ah, yes, thank you. Chaurasi. There is a village called Chaurasi, 84. Well, it's not Chaurasi Mahasiddha, but there is Chaurasi. In that village, Chaurasi, there is a temple of Varahi, in the central figure. There are tantric images. I have not seen them. I don't know if it is old paintings or is carved in the stone. Tantric things, don't know in detail what. And the main figure, it's rare to see the statue like that. It's usually covered with flowers and red color, in the Hindu style. So according to the Hindu tantric followers, this is Varahi, and that deity has like big belly and soul, right? So S-O-W. How you pronounce? So face. She is holding a fish and a kapala. Yes, it reminded me of Tilopa holding a fish. On the other side is Vajravarahi of Vajrayana holding a kapala, and of course she has the Varahi head on her own head. This is just to mention like that there are some things in common, of course, in these two tantric traditions, Buddhist and Hindu. But since we can find hundreds and hundreds of situations where the Buddhist place has been transformed into Hindu places because of lack of state support from the kings of that time. Maybe there is some connection between Chaurasi, Varahi temple in Chaurasi, and former Vajrayana practice. Yes, this is just to show the complexity of the language situation in eastern India. So there is not only Orissa, Maithili, and Bangla, but there are so many. That pic is from the website Way of Bodhi. Way of Bodhi. Way of Bodhi. This blog is run by two Indian practitioners of Vajrayana, man and woman, and they were students of Penor Rinpoche in Mysore. And on their website, they give simple they report teachings and biographies of some Mahasiddhas or even Mahayana masters. But also, there is one part of the blog dedicated to the discoveries of Buddhist remains in South India, Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. It's very interesting to have a look at the blog also. We are finding more and more remains of stupas, monasteries everywhere in India. Really, India has been almost totally Buddhist at some point. It's really amazing. Yes, Hara Prasad Shastri, who discovered the Charyapada, the Doha, in Nepal in 1907. Okay, and then I've almost finished. No idea of the time. It's okay, no? 20 after. Oh, okay. To finish, okay, my last. Some, but it's already many. Mahasiddha, they are or they are not in the list of 84. There is no official list. There are many others which are not mentioned. For example, Padmasambhava is not mentioned as such in that 84. But there is in the 84, there is one biography in which we find elements of the life of Guru Rinpoche, but is not mentioned in that with that name. So King Irabhuti, Princess Lakshminkara, Padmasambhava, So all these masters, according to their biographies, or at least one of their biographies of each, they are related to Orissa. Either they are mentioned as having been born there, or they have studied there, like those who learn the Kala Chakra, or they have taught, they have built a monastery, or they have spent all their life there. Anyway, Padmasambhava, Vajraganta, Darikapada, Virupa, Kanapa, or Krishnachara, he has two names. These are in the 84. Sahaja Lalita, Advaya, Gyanavajra, Savari, and they are all in the Tibetan Tengyur or Tengyur. I don't know where there are the biographies and the Doha of the Mahasiddhas, maybe Tengyur. Anyway, there are Tibetan biographies about them, mentioning that this one has revealed that Tantra, this one has built that temple or that monastery. I don't mention here the Mahayana, the many Mahayana teachers like it is the main of Paramita tradition. Okay, I shouldn't forget him. Yes, Nagarjuna. Even Nagarjuna, as a Mahayana teacher, has built a monastery there, and Dharmakirti has built a small temple, and all this lineage from Nagarjuna also. But for those who are really mentioned as purely Vajrayana masters, there are already so many. Shavaripa is from the Shabara tribe, which is one of the main ethnic groups in Orissa and eastern India. And he was a hunter, and his description it really matches the style of the tribal people of that time. And Sarapada, Kambalapada, Palmavasha, Luipa, all this, you know most of them, Naropa, and Mandarava. I didn't mention Mandarava. Mandarava, most of her career was in West Bengal. The only problem is to locate Zahor, right? Zahor. And one Indian expert is working on it to find the Zahor place which would be consistent with the life of Mandarava, which is mostly in Bengal, before going to Nepal. So let's see if we can find one day a Zahor in that place. Actually, Guru Rinpoche, in the life story of Mandarava, the Tibetan biography of Mandarava, Guru Rinpoche at one point sent her to teach, to help people in different places, in Bengal, in Uddiyana, in Nepal also. So if Uddiyana means now you go to Pakistan, it's quite a long way, but why not? I'm not, of course. I'm just giving a body of evidences, which is growing more and more as the discoveries are improving. Of course, as practitioners, there is no conflict, because in one sentence of Guru Rinpoche is at the doorstep of every devotee there is a Padma. So on a spiritual level, of course, no problem. Even Dujam Rinpoche could appear here and there. But as I said in the beginning, if we can have a place which has most likely been blessed by so many masters, including Padmasambhava, it really will enhance our faith and devotion when we go there. And it would make sense then to revive practice there also. Conclusion, you're almost free. Already some lamas, especially those who are living in Orissa, work on the grounding practice there. Like also Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. He wants to re-Indianize Vajrayana. It's true. Thanks to the Tibetans, Vajrayana has been saved and developed for 1,000 years. Now, due to the situation, it's back to India and other places. So it has to be re-Indianized if we want local people to stop considering Buddhism as a foreign religion. Because Indians have forgotten Buddhism for many centuries. So of course it has survived. It has some elements of Buddhism are still can be identified in many spiritual movements in India, like the Nat Yogi. If you read the articles by James Mallinson, you know, right? James Mallinson, I would recommend. James Mallinson, Mallinson, is currently an amazing Sanskrit scholar, but he's a specialist of the Nat Yogi, Kampata Yogi, right? Yogis with the big earrings. But he's also a practitioner of that lineage, and he has been recognized as a Mahant, which is a very high level of master in that tradition. But especially one of his articles, Kalavanchana, so it's a place name. Huh? You can search Kalavanchana, K-A-L-A, Kala, V-A-N-C-A-N-A, Kalavanchana, in the Konkan. Konkan is Western India, K-O-N-K-A-N. You can find on academia.edu. All his articles are there, even one full book. He himself shows that the first Hatha Yoga techniques, and even the word comes from Vajrayana. He shows it very seriously. Although he's himself practitioner of Hatha Yoga and Nat Yogi tradition. It's so enlightening. And for the relationship, between Brahmins and Buddhism, you know, Johannes Bonkhorst, from Switzerland, is also amazing. It's changing our vision of the history of Buddhism and Hinduism and how they confronted each other. Johannes Bonkhorst from the Lausanne University. He's retired, but still active. Just to say that there are traces of Buddhism in different present Indian traditions, or also past Indian traditions. And for Buddhism to be to take root in India, if we can find former Buddhist places like Orissa, of course it makes more sense to focus on this. And but I think we have, or the masters have to, and they are adapting to Indian context. It means when Jigme Rinpoche, who is a Lama in Orissa, is providing Oriya language class to his monks so that they can interact with local people. Personally, I think not only that, but the architecture also maybe could be adapted to Indian style or to former Buddhist style. So it's just my own feeling. Huh? So that local people will stop looking at them as really refugees or foreigners, or it's the same in Nepal. Refugees, who sometimes receive a lot of money from abroad. This is not the best way to attract local people in the spirituality of Buddhism. They are going to see it in a different way. And but mostly we need translations. If we talk about Orissa, we need that teachings. I don't know, sadhana, even. For example, the books from Chogyal Trungpa Rinpoche in English could be translated into Oriya. But because after the conference in Orissa last week, when I walked in the archaeological site, more than one young Indian people came to me and they say, "Oh, it's very interesting. Can you give us references?" And they are really curious. The new generation becomes aware that it's their own. If we take this hypothesis seriously, then it means the ancestors of present-day people of Orissa have developed, transmitted to Tibet and then the world, the Vajrayana. They have revealed the Tantras, they have practiced them, transmitted them. It's their own ancestors, so they are very interested. And so if we consider Guru Padmasambhava as the second Buddha, then Sambalpur in India, and the lake, is a second Lumbini. Then if Padmasambhava became somehow enlightened in Orissa, then it became the second Bodh Gaya, the second everything, maybe. And if you want to see more details about what I said today, maybe I can recommend this book. Tantric Buddhism, Uddiyana and Odisha. Second edition, because I put much more pics and corrected dozens of typos, but there are still, every time I open any page. And yes, I talk about also the traces of Buddhism in other Indian traditions, which flourished after the disappearing of Buddhism. I quote a lot also this Johannes Bonkhorst, and Indian researchers, which are not quoted enough, I think, by Western researchers. I meet them and I read their work, and they bring a lot of information. And the last one, yes. Thank you for your attention. Now we can talk.
Thank you. So we only have a few minutes, but because we started a little late, we're
sorry for this technique.
I have a few questions for you, but I think I will send you an email, and then maybe we can talk ideas like, do you know about where the 64 Yogini temple, the time period, has it been dated or?
No, it's all these kind of structures, they are around the same time, like it can be 9th, 10th, 11th century, but I have not found yet even the identification of each yogini, and I'm not sure the present day statue of yoginis which are inserted in the walls of the temple, they belong to the same period as the walls themselves, because the stone is different.
Right.
No, for the moment I don't have.
But it might be interesting to have like that clarified.
Yes.
Just one question before we open it to, have you found collections of texts, of these kinds of texts? Have they been preserved or in some instance, like in museums or?
The text, you mean the Doha Kosha of the Mahasiddhas, or the text of King Indrabhuti and Lakshminkara?
Any kind of collections. Okay. Is it still available in?
Yes, the text, all Indian texts that I mentioned, yes, they are available even online for some of them. For example, the two texts by Indrabhuti and Lakshminkara, they exist Sanskrit manuscripts kept in some Indian libraries, and it has been transcribed and published by Indian researchers. And the references are, I can find the bibliography of my book, I can Great. Find and send to you, yes. And for Lakshminkara also, we have the Sanskrit original and the Tibetan translation, and I translated actually her text at Vayasidi. I presented in my book also.
Oh, great.
The full text by Lakshminkara, because, you know, Lakshminkara is considered as the founder of Sahajayana. It's so interesting because then in Vaishnava Hinduism of Orissa, there is the Sahajiya Vaishnava. Just 2-3 centuries after the end of the big Buddhist universities. And or it could be the topic of another talk, because if I start, 1 more hour.
So, any questions or comments coming from? Yes.
Just a little bit follow on the question about dating. Could you say which centuries using Buddhism really flourished? Like when you were talking about the statues of the Hindu deities trampling the Naga gods, and like what era was that, and how many centuries does it seem that Buddhism was flourishing there?
For Vajrayana, so it means the Tantra. Tantra, where in the introduction, it's not anymore Shakyamuni Buddha, like in the Sutra. It's not anymore the Buddha in the form of Buddha Vairochana, like the first Tantras, but it's Vajrasattva. In the womb of the partner, so it's very clear that is the Yogini Tantra, right? The female element is very. This from the time of Indrabhuti Padmasambhava, 8th century, to, we usually consider that Nalanda was destroyed in the year 1200. And just a few years later, the last one in Bangladesh, like Jagat-Dala and Somapuri, were also destroyed. So after that, there is no trace of sustained activity of Buddhism from the 13th century onward. But then we see Indian movements really being inspired by Buddhism. But that trampling deities, this is during the time of Buddhism, when the kings were more and more Shaiva, and so less and less supporting Buddhist monasteries. We can talk after.
Yeah, it's more a small side topic that caught my interest. You said that Guru Padmasambhava is mentioned in this text collection, the Sadhana Mala, right? Is that something that you can clearly identify with the Tibetan Guru Rinpoche?
Yes. So just one detail. I don't think Padmasambhava himself is mentioned in the Sadhana Mala. I'm not sure. I talk about the deities, the Kurukula of Uddiyana, Marichi of Uddiyana, and some others. But there is no doubt that Padmasambhava is Guru Rinpoche. Today I talk only of Padmasambhava because if we start to tell to Indian people Guru Rinpoche, it sounds so foreign. And of course, for us Westerners, we take Vajrayana from the Tibetans, and we are so obsessed by the Tibetan world. Everything Tibetan is admirable. But from the point of view of the Indian people who saw Tibetans coming as refugees with so strange face and clothes and everything, they are not going to learn Tibetan language to know about Buddhism.
No. Actually, my question was: is there a Newari source for Padmasambhava? Is that because that was my impression that he's mentioned in the Sadhana Mala? Or is a picture you give this sort of show this picture of him?
No. Any picture I show of Padmasambhava is from Tibetan source.
Oh, okay.
There is no image. But I will finish with this. The word Padmasambhava is written in an inscription at the back of a big statue of Avalokiteshvara, which everybody can see in Odisha, in Udayagiri. There are many lines of there is a mention of a king of that time, some dharani, some strange syllables, but some words that we can understand from Indian languages, including the word Padmasambhava. And they talk about relics. There is Padmasambhava and the word relics. There is a stupa, relics, Buddha relics, stupa Padmasambhava. And there is a stupa in the neighboring site where the Chinese pilgrims, Chinese pilgrims, where Tibetan historians, Taranatha, mentioned that people could see light coming from that stupa because of the powerful relics inside. So just these elements made people wondering, do they refer to relics from Padmasambhava kept there? But at least we have one mention of Padmasambhava in an Indian inscription. It's the only one, not in any Indian text or even Newars text. No? Yes.
Thank you very much for your talk. I was just wondering if you had looked into, because I was just looking it up, Mark Dziszkowski, when he draws the pithas, there's a section, an article, where he's comparing the pithas in various sources. And there's one source, the Hindu source called the Yogini Hridaya Tantra, where there is both an Uddiyana as a pitha and an Odisha as a pitha. So there are both in the same text. And maybe that might, guide some.
So it's one more text. I mentioned one already, where there is Odra, meaning which is a former name of Odisha, and Uddiyana. So there is another one.
Yeah. So in the Yogini Hridaya, so there's and then Uddiyana is in the Nyasa process, where you're putting in the pithas on various parts of your body. Yes. Uddiyana is put as the breath. So usually it follows a geographic sense. So I'm wondering if you could explore the Nyasa side of the sacred geography, where you're put pithas on various parts of your body according to geography. So maybe that could guide something.
I think you are qualified to explore by yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes. We just exchange information. As you know, I get few things. I put more in my books, and I'm also would be happy to receive from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And please send me the reference.
Yeah, sure.
Article.
Yeah.
I didn't. My email is like Dr. Fred, DRFRED. Okay, DR like doctor, FRED, Fred, I'm Frédéric. Dr. Fred 108, of course. It could be 84 anyway.
At
gmail.com. I would be happy to watch.
All right, sure. Thank you so much.
We can have tea also after the talk to exchange more. Yeah, so it's up. Any other remarks? No? Ça va? Okay, so thank you very much for your time. I hope
Thank you so much. We would like to thank you from our hearts